Welcome to the Great Start to Quality in Class May Provider Training recording. This is a recording of the training that we provided in May, and this is not for training credit. This is just for your information. So welcome, and we are going to get started with some introductions of all of us that are going to be supporting you with this recording today. I am Kristen Howard, and I am the Assessment Manager with Great Start to Quality.
Good afternoon, everyone, or whenever you're watching this. Hello, I'm Jennifer Roundtree. I'm the Technical Assistant Consultant and Class Certified Trainer for Great Start to Quality.
Hello, everyone. I am Allison Page, and I am an assessor for Great Start to Quality and a reliable class observer.
Great. So before we get going with our learning objectives, I just want to let you know that for our time together today, you will need a piece of paper and a writing utensil. So if you have that around you, get that ready. And if not, just maybe pause and go ahead and get that so that you're ready when it's time to reflect. So today for our time together, we are going to continue to learn about the class assessment tool and understand how class captures interactions between educators and children. We're going to identify the ages that each tool supports within diverse settings, particularly focusing on infants and toddlers. We're going to gain insight on how Great Start to Quality is shifting to a new model to support providers with continuous quality improvement. We're going to hear from Allison, a Great Start to Quality assessor, and learn tips about class observations. And we're going to build excitement about the supportive revisions coming to Great Start to Quality.
Thanks, Kristen, for the overview. So I'll get us started on our class. So today for this recording, we're going to focus on infant and toddler class. So we're going to take some time to unpack those pieces, watch some videos. But before we get started, let's get grounded on what class is. Some of you have listened to some of our trainings before, or you've attended them, or you might be class reliable or yourself. But we want to talk a little bit about the classroom assessment scoring system, or class tool. It's an observation tool created by Teachstone out of the University of Virginia, and it really focuses on a continuous quality improvement cycle, just like this image on the slide. And so the first thing that happens when the class tool is used is an on-site observation, which Allison is going to provide a little more detail about to help support you in better understanding that. But that's the measure piece. So that observation is conducted. And then based off of the observation, you have an opportunity for some improvement, because we know in our field, we're on a continuous learning, right? We're always bettering ourselves, thinking about the best way to support the children in our setting. And so that's the improve piece, with the focus being the blue circle in the center, really focusing on the teacher-child interactions. That's what the class tool centers on. The class tool can be used in any program setting with any type of curriculum. It's not created based off of a set program type or a set program curriculum. But so it can be used if you're a family child care provider, a Montessori provider, Reggio Inspired, GSRP, Head Start, whatever your setting is, it looks at those teacher-child interactions. And so the purpose of the observation is to really help enhance your skills, to call out what you're doing that is strong, those opportunities, and then collect those opportunities for growth. So that's the improve piece, where you'll have a coaching conversation with your Great Start to Quality coach from your local Great Start to Quality Resource Center, or with an administrator, or just your teaching team. But there's opportunity to improve based off of each observation. And then from that conversation, that coaching conversation that happens, you move into the learn piece, which is where you identify by setting SMART goals, which are measurable goals, to really unpack what do you want to learn. Is it a learning you might want to take in my registry, a training you want to attend? Are they resources that you want to have an opportunity to read more about, or a curriculum you want to learn more about? Is it something within your environment that will support teacher-child interactions? That's your area of growth. And so that's the CQI process for the class system. With class focusing on those teacher-child interactions, the child is the center, just like we see this image here on the screen. And so we know we talk a lot about the child's microsystem, the family, classroom, religious setting, peer group, that's all impacts that microsystem. And so there was a great deal amount of research that happened in the 1970s and 80s about the attachment theory that really called out that not only does the family impact that child's growth in their religious setting, but the classroom or that childcare setting environment really has the opportunity, who that child is with interacting with each day really impacts their growth and helps that child become independent, helps them see them as competent and capable. And so that is that microsystem that then feeds into a child's macro system, the big picture, right, of their community. And so each of you have that opportunity to build those relationships, strengthen those connections, improve those interactions with each child in your setting to help support that microsystem and build that attachment that all children need. Every child needs someone to say, I care about you, I see you, I value you. And those are the things that you do every day. And so the class is really aligned with this theory on attachment to help child care providers see themselves as strengthening that child's development. So with all of that said, it really focuses on relationships. As I mentioned earlier, this isn't about learning a curriculum. It's not a checklist. This is about how do you every day take your setting, take that curriculum, take the state standards we have, take all of your education, take everything you have in your toolbox and put that together to build those relationships with every child in your setting. How are you being intentional? How are you being engaged? How are you helping children and their families feel connected? How are you focusing on equity in your work? How are you making sure every child has access to what they need and that they're feeling supported? How are you welcoming every family? This is what the class tool really focuses on and what our assessment team is observing when they come out to conduct an on-site observation. They want to see what you're doing to build those relationships. How are you taking time to connect with a child? How are you expanding their learning? How are you introducing vocabulary and advanced language? How are you providing feedback? How are you engaging in conversation with them? How are you helping that child to see they're an important part of that community and within your setting? So this is what it focuses on, relationships. That's the heart and soul of class, things you do every day. So we really wanted you to feel comfortable and secure with this piece. It's not something you have to learn, something that doesn't align with best practice. It's rooted in research. It's valid and reliable. The class tool is used in all states in 43 countries. There's a ton of support. This training is one of them to help you see that what you're doing is really creating those strong relational bonds with every child and every family in your setting. So with that said, let's take a look at the organization of class. Today's training is going to focus on the infant and toddler tool. We will do a future training that will talk more about the pre-K tool. So if you're a pre-K educator and you're listening today, that's awesome. We're glad you're wanting to learn, but know that more training will come specific to the pre-K tool. So these are the three class tools that Michigan will be using within Great Start to Quality. So we have the infant tool, which is birth to 18 months, toddler, which is 15 to 36 months, and then the pre-K tool, which is 3 years to 5 years. Each tool is structured the same way, and Allison's going to speak to how that observation process happens. But what is unique with each age group is dependent upon those developmental milestones, those best practices for the children of that age group. So what the observer is looking at for infants is going to align with what infants are able to do based off of their ages in that setting. And then when they're looking at toddlers, they're going to use those developmental milestones for toddlers in their observation, and then the same for pre-K. The structure and the observation process isn't going to change. But what will happen is they're going to look for how are those connections happening between the educator in that setting and all children within that setting to support them meeting those developmental milestones that we know are best practices. So let's get a little bit into the class terminology here. And again, we're going to talk specifically on the infant and toddler tool today. This screenshot here shows all three of the tools. And so I'm going to talk about some terms called domains, which are sort of the big buckets of the class tool. This is what the observers are looking at when they come out to conduct on-site observations. And then in the colored areas, we're going to talk about dimensions. These are specific interactions that they will be looking for in their observation. So for infant, we have responsive caregiving. And basically that means, that's the domain, how is the educator responding to the infant's cues? And the dimensions that are called out with this are relational climate, teacher sensitivity, facilitated exploration, and early language support. And so each of those we'll talk a little bit more about for the infant tool as we move on. But let's move over to the middle column here and look at the toddler tool. So we have two domains here, emotional and behavior support and engaged support for learning. Again, this is dependent upon best practice for toddlers ages 15 to 36 months. So you will see there's a bit of an overlap here between the ages for the infant class tool and the toddler class tool. And some of you might already be wondering, well, I have a mixed age setting. How's this going to work? Allison will answer that. So just hold that question until we get to her section. But let's go back and look at the domains for the toddler tool. So we know toddlers have big emotions. And for many, this is their first time being in a childcare setting, and they're working and learning how to connect with their peers. So there's opportunities to support their social and emotional growth, as well as supporting behavioral support. We know toddlers need opportunities for yes environments. They need opportunities to explore and manipulate materials. They need to have some opportunity for self-care and leadership and autonomy. So all of that's wrapped up in the behavioral support piece. And then the second domain in the toddler tool is the engaged support for learning. So that's really where the educator is being very intentional, very consistent and engaged in supporting facilitation of the learning space, how they're using the materials, how they're connecting. We talk in class terms about frequency, depth, and duration. So how often something is happening with the educator and the children in the setting, the depth of it, and how long that lasts. Those are key pieces for the class observers when they come out to look at those teacher-child interactions. Quality of feedback is a dimension that we talk about in the toddler tool. And really what that means is we know toddlers start to have expanded vocabulary. They're wanting to have conversations. They're learning new words all the time. So they want to connect and talk to you. And so with that quality of feedback, it is how is that educator having that consistent exchange and those conversations to expand that learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we go into the toddler tool. And then you'll notice language modeling. And if you look at all three of the class tools, you'll see language support is in all three. Research shows, and we all know, that the earlier we start infusing children with language opportunities, the better we prepare them as they enter school and beyond. We know that infants need to be talked to. We sing to them, we read stories to them, we communicate with infants, and we talk about nonverbal communication as well. We want to see that carried over into toddlers and pre-Ks. Language modeling happens in all ages of the class tool. So just remember that important piece, and we'll talk some more about that. So let's move into the specific domain and dimensions for the infant class tool, and we're going to see some videos to see how this is modeled. So we have one big domain, one big bucket that we're talking about is responsive caregiving. So when you look at this image here of these two educators in this setting, How are they responding to all the infants in this image? We see through relational climate, we see close proximity. They're on the floor. We see they're holding infants. They're touching them. The infants are close to them. We often say with relational climate, it's sort of like a space you don't want to leave. There's matched affect, there's laughter, there's respect for the infants' bodies. They're using their names, they're talking to them. It's just a warm environment where you're like, I just want to sit here all day and soak this all in. Then we move into teacher sensitivity. And with teacher sensitivity, what we're talking about here is the teacher's awareness, again, of all the children in the setting. Sort of like that visual scanning, looking around, meeting the needs of infants, both verbal and nonverbal, before they occur. So really, again, it aligns with that teacher-child interaction of getting to know each child. What does each child need to feel supported, to feel connected, to feel valued and loved? We know every child is different. We all know that every child might have a different temperament style or attachment style. So it's important for the teachers to take time in that setting to get to know them and to be aware of those needs and respond to them. And then when they respond to the infants, does that meet the need of the infants? What the observer does not want to see is that an educator is responding to all infants the same way, and it doesn't impact them. So not only are they looking at what the educators are doing in the setting, but they're looking at how the children are responding to what's happening. That's part of the teacher sensitivity piece. Then we move on to facilitated exploration. We know infants need opportunities to learn and grow. We don't want to see infants in a swing or a rocker all day. We know that they need to have opportunities to manipulate materials, to touch things, to look outside, to be outdoors, to have opportunities to connect with each other, and for the educator to kind of support and carry, to follow their interests, to really follow the lead of the infant. That's all that we're talking about facilitated exploration. And then the fourth dimension in the infant toddler tool is language modeling. So when we talk about language modeling, we're talking about the frequency, depth, and duration of those conversations that the educators in that setting are having with every infant. Are they talking to them, singing to them, reading books to them? What are they doing non-verbally to provide and support communication? These are all important things that will support that language learning and acquisition that we want to see infants having. And the observers will be watching for that. And then again, think about the frequency, depth, and duration of that happening. So let's take a look at a video that highlights an infant setting with an infant educator focused on building the relational climate during a diaper change. Before we start the video, one thing I want to say about the class tool, it's not looking for a specific time of the day to see this happening. We know that teacher-child interactions happen all the time. They happen when a child arrives, during a small group, outdoor time, meal time, hand washing, diaper changing. There's opportunities throughout the day consistently to build and support teacher-child interactions. And that's what the class tool looks for, that frequency, depth, and duration. How often are those educators in those settings being intentional, being engaged, being persistent to build those connections with every child? Now, recognizing that every child has different needs. So let's take a look at this video. I'm going to get it set up here. Let me pull this up and then we'll get right back in. And while we show this video, what we'd like you to do is just observe, notice what you see, and take some notes. Kristen mentioned earlier, we would love to have you get a piece of paper and a writing utensil. Just pay attention to how this educator is building those relational connections with this infant during diaper changing. Let's take a look.
Got to take this bib off. It's a little wet. Yeah, it's a little wet. Let me wipe your nose. Let me get you a wipe. Let me wipe your nose, Katie. Let me wipe your nose. Then you gotta wash your hands.
What you do?
Yeah.
What
Then you have to wash your hands.
Yay.
Yeah, wipe your nose. We wipe your nose.
Circle.
Huh? Got your nose white?
Square.
Got your nose white? Huh? Got your nose white?
So even though this was a short 45-second video, we saw how this educator took an opportunity during a daily task to be respectful to the infant, to communicate what was going to happen, to smile, to be within close proximity, to be respectful of the infant's body, and to communicate all of that while it's happening. So that's what we're looking for with relational climate. Let's take a look at another infant video here. And Kristen, are you still able to see my screen? Perfect. This one, we're going to take a look at some facilitated exploration with an infant. So again, this is an opportunity for you to take a look at a short video to see how this educator is supporting exploration of materials within the setting to support the learning of this infant based off of their interest. So let's take a look.
Do you want to look at these? What are these? Or you're just going to look around the room? Huh? What do you think you would like to do now? You keep looking at the ribbons. Do you want to go look at the ribbons? You want to go check them out? You keep looking over there. Do you want to look over there? You keep looking over here. Is this attracting your eye? Would you like to check that out? Oh, what is that? Yeah, you got it. There you go. Whoa. It's moving. What do you think about that? Oh. Pull. Shake, shake. Shake, shake. There you go. Shake, shake. Oh, what do you think? What do you think? Oh. Oh. Oh, shake, 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 shake it. Shake, shake it, huh? Yeah. Oh, so exciting. Oh, are you looking at yourself in the mirror? I see you, Owen. You want to go look at books? Here, come on, just do one of them. What do you think? Oh, what book would you like to choose? What book would you like? Do you want to do this color one? What about that one? You want to do that one? The little face that does that one interest you? Not really? Do you want to sit down and look at it? We have to sit down. No, not really. Okay. How about this one? You usually like this one. What about that one? Would that interest you? Yeah. Oh, it's a fuzzy duck. What does a duck say? Quack, quack. Quack, quack. Quack, quack. Do you want to sit down and read it though? You can sit down and read it. Huh?
So I'm going to pull the PowerPoint back up so we can reflect on this video and talk a little bit about it. I'm going to give you a second to keep reflecting. If we were all together, we would be putting things in the chat. But since you're watching the recording, let's get into the right slide. Okay, so thinking about responsive caregiving for the infant class tool in the video we just saw with this educator in that setting. Some things that you might have picked up on was close proximity, smiling, respect, teacher sensitivity. She was aware of the needs of this infant. We only saw her with one infant and we only watched for 2 minutes, but she was aware of what he needed. Facilitated exploration. She was guiding him, asking him questions, allowing him choices, letting him touch and manipulate things. I even heard her say, I know you like this one. And then language modeling. It was consistent. She was communicating everything to him. She was looking not only at his verbal communication, but nonverbal. So that's what we're looking for with the infant class tool. An engaged educator, being intentional, taking time to build those relationships with every child in the setting, and that frequency, depth, and duration. When we're talking about language modeling and facilitated exploration, it can happen at any time, just like in our first video where we saw that happening, the communication happening during a diaper change. So at mealtime, when a child arrives, self-care, hand washing, all of those are so important. There's always opportunity to build relationships with children, as many of you practice every day. So that's really what the infant class tool looks at. So let's take a moment and move into the toddler class tool. Again, this is ages 15 to 36 months. And so we have two domains or big buckets that the on-site observation will cover. The first one is emotional and behavioral support. And if you recall, I mentioned earlier that each class tool aligns with what is developmentally appropriate for each age of that age group. So we're talking toddlers now. So we have positive climate, negative climate, and teacher sensitivity are the items we're talking about here. And when we talk about positive climate, again, just like in the relational climate with the infant tool, how is that educator building those connections, creating a warm, safe space that you kind of, I just want to be here all day sort of feeling? Are they doing close proximity with the toddlers? Are they on the floor with them, or are they standing over them? When a toddler is talking, are they making eye contact if it's culturally appropriate? Are they being respectful and using the toddler's name? Are they matching their affect and their excitement and their joy that they show? Those are all pieces to consider with positive climate. With negative climate, it's the absence of negative climate. So these are things that the observer does not want to see. So yelling, threatening, physical punishment, harsh tones, anything that sort of those red flag moments, right? We really want to focus on the absence of that. So if there's a situation and there's a peer disruption and the educator in that setting needs to support the toddlers that are having the dispute with each other, it's thinking about how is that educator supporting those toddlers to work through that? How quickly do they get there? All of those pieces are important, and that line aligns with the teacher sensitivity, which that we talked about that in the infant tool. So we'll see it again in the toddler, and you'll see it in the pre-K tool. So it's the awareness and the needs, both verbal and nonverbal, of the toddlers in that setting, and how the teacher is supporting every child with that and meeting their needs. So again, it's that balance of the support that the teacher is providing and then looking at the child to see if that was comforting to them. Did that meet their need? Those are pieces we're talking about with the emotional and behavioral support. So let's take a look at a behavior guidance for toddlers. So I'm gonna pull up the video here. And this one that we're going to see here in a second, get the screen ready, is going to show a toddler setting in a classroom setting. And this is on behavior guidance. So this is redirecting a child who is climbing during story time. So again, just use your eyes and ears. Take a look and listen and see what you notice as how these educators support a child who does some climbing during story time. Let's take a look and then we can reflect.
Here we go. Let's see what she's going to do. This is called Millions of Snowflakes. Only one baby one. One little snowflake. Oh, he's all by himself. Falls on my nose. Show me your nose, Casey. Where's your nose? Summer, where's your nose? You know what, Casey? That's fun that you can climb, but I need you to sit on your bottom now while we're reading our story because your feet almost hit Duncan. Yes, you can climb there when we're done with our story, okay? look, the one little snowflake fell on her nose. It makes me shiver. From where, Casey? From my head to my toes. Where's your toes, Casey? Show me your toes. There they are. Now, how many snowflakes? Two little snowflakes. Get in my...
Okay, so again, another short clip just to demonstrate how these educators were supporting this child who clearly wanted to climb during story time. But what did you notice here? Again, if you just look at this image right here, there's close proximity. The educators and the teachers are close to each other. Their body orientation, they're focused on each other. They're within that close proximity. There was smiling. There was a warm tone of voice, warm that matched affect. When Casey, the child in the back, was wanting to climb, she was helping him with redirecting, giving him some choices of things he could do, acknowledging that, yes, I see you do want to climb, but we can do that after, right? And then trying to engage him into the story, which he was actively participating. Neither educator went over and moved the child or did any other yelling or threatening, right? So we saw an absence of any negative climate here. And they both demonstrated teacher sensitivity. The educator closest to the child in the back looked at him and kind of gently moved her hand close to him when he was putting his feet up. And the teacher with the book was doing redirecting to kind of get his interest back into the story, which he was paying attention. He was able to respond. And notice too, they allowed him to kind of touch, and they weren't telling him crisscross applesauce or he had to stay still. They recognized his need to move. So that's part of that teacher sensitivity piece that we want to pay attention to as well. So let's go back into our PowerPoint, and we're going to continue on with the toddler tool. So we looked at the first bucket, emotional and behavioral support, and talked about positive climate, negative climate, and teacher sensitivity. So let's move on to classroom organization and behavioral support. And so we did already watch a video on behavior guidance. The other piece we want to talk about with the toddler tool is regard for student perspectives. And so this is really on how the educator in that setting is allowing the toddlers to have some choices, to show leadership, that autonomy piece, right? Toddlers need yes opportunities. They need opportunities to set the table, to get themselves dressed, to make choices, to pick materials they want to use. So how is that being incorporated into the setting? That's what we're talking about for regard for student perspectives. And then finally, instructional support, the third domain for the toddler tool. So we already talked about language modeling with the infant tool, and we see it again here in the toddler tool. We know that conversations, communication is key with toddlers, both verbal and nonverbal. So the observer is going to be looking to see that frequency, depth, and duration. And for quality of feedback, as I shared earlier, toddlers like to talk. They're excited with those, they're broadening their vocabulary. They want to engage in conversations. They want to tell you about their world, right? What's happening at home. They're excited to be with their peers. So you might see more peer-to-peer conversation. And so that quality of feedback, again, focuses on how that educator is responding to what the toddler is saying. Are they engaged? Are they intentional? Are they taking that opportunity to expand that learning? Just as when we look at this image here with these educators sitting with these toddlers, they have some blocks on the table. They're engaged. They're modeling, they're matching what the toddlers are doing, right? So they're taking and looking for opportunities to expand and extend learning. That's what we're talking about with quality of feedback. And we're actually going to take a look at a video here. So I'm going to get this set up for us. We have one final video with this toddler tool. And let's get this pulled up. Okay, so the same thing, we should be pros now. We're going to take an opportunity to observe, just like an observer would in your setting. See what you notice here with quality of feedback with this educator and these toddlers. How is she extending their learning through the conversations, following their lead, You'll probably also pick up on positive climate, the absence of negative climate, teacher sensitivity. You'll definitely see language modeling, behavioral guidance, regard for student perspectives. Do these toddlers have choices? Are they able to be leaders? It's a very short clip, but see what you notice, and then we'll reflect.
For desserts and stuff.
What else we have? What's this one right here? This is about dump trucks.
Oh, what is this?
Switch his face up. It's bitter.
That's a man. Uh-oh, it says good night gorilla. Where's the gorilla at? Gorilla right there.
Orange. What shape is that? Circle around and around.
Oh,
circle.
the gorilla got the key
Alright,
in his
good
hand.
job.
What has the gorilla? Is he going like this?
All right, you like that up there?
Goodness, don't tell. Don't tell.
Dinosaurs.
Let's see what's the story all about. Oh, look at this. It says good night gorilla. So the gorilla, what's the gorilla at?
Right there.
Right where? Is that his house or is that a cage?
Cage.
How you know that's a cage?
Because the monkey to get out there.
Because the monkey getting out of there.
The gorilla get out there.
The gorilla get out there. These lines tell us that's just a cage.
Yeah. He look at the merry-go-round.
That's a merry-go-round. What's on the merry-go-round?
It's a mouse.
So where do you think this is at? If there's a merry-go-round and there's a gorilla who's in a cage, where is that at? Is that on a farm or at a zoo? Is that the zoo?
So keep reflecting. I'm going to get us back into our PowerPoint so we can come together and wrap up the toddler tool. All right. So we were focusing on quality of feedback, but I'm sure you saw some of the other dimensions happening within this video. So I definitely heard language modeling, right? We had that positive climate, that close proximity, that matched affect. Those teachers, they were engaged, right? Very intentional. Quality of feedback was focusing on how were they keeping those children engaged? How were they supporting opportunities to learn? How are they extending and expanding that? And not just with one child, but trying to get many children engaged in that piece, that frequency, depth, and duration. Again, when we think about the class tool, we are focusing on teacher-child interactions and how that happens at any time of the day. It's not about a set curriculum. It's not about a set philosophy. It's about how are you building relationships with every child in your setting. So we know that you are wanting to learn more about the pre-K class tool. So know that we will have a training coming in the late summer, and more information will be shared once we get those dates settled. And that training opportunity will be within my registry as well. So stay tuned for more information on the pre-K class tool. But we want to give you a moment just to reflect a little bit, because I know I've spent a decent amount of time talking about the infant and toddler class tools with each of you. And so here's a question for all of you. So the class tool supports educators in the following. So just take a moment. What would your answer be? A, continuous quality improvement. B, areas of strength. C, areas of growth. D, opportunities for professional development. Or E, all of the above. I'm going to pause for a few seconds just for you to reflect. The class tool supports educators in the following. Which one would you answer? So if you selected E, all of the above, that is correct. The class tool supports educators in continuous quality improvement, identifying areas of strength, areas of growth, and opportunities for professional development. If you think about what I shared at the very beginning when we were learning some of those key fundamental pieces about the class tool. So there's one more question for you. This one's a true or false. I said this a few times. Hopefully it resonates with everyone. Language modeling is important in all ages of the class tool. Is that true or false? Are you ready for the answer? If you selected true, that's correct. Language modeling is important in all ages of the class tool.
Okay, so now we're going to do a little reflection activity, and this is where we'd like you to grab that piece of paper and a writing utensil, and we are just going to take some time to reflect together. So Jennifer gave a lot of specific information on the interactions that class focuses on. So we want you to take some time to pause and reflect on your interactions with the children in your care. So divide your paper in two, okay? And you're going to reflect first on one side of the paper, everything we've discussed so far with class. And you're going to write down some things that you're feeling really confident about, things you're already doing in your program that will align with class, things you will do really well with that you are really confident of that if you were to have a class observation soon. So write some of those things down. Some of those things you're already doing well. And then look at that list and celebrate the things you're already doing. I know that it's a lot. You're already doing quite a bit, and I'm sure that you could see yourself in some of those videos that Jennifer was showing us. Now on the other side of the paper, write areas of growth as the heading and take some time to really think about some things that you could use some more coaching around, things very specific to your program that you think maybe you need some more time with. Maybe things that you want to get into my registry and search for some training around. Maybe things you'd like to have a conversation with your local resource center, Great Start to Quality support person with. So take some time to write some things that you have some areas of growth, things you really want to work on. And then look at that list and come up with a plan of how you want to work on these things. Maybe start thinking of some goals surrounding adult-child interactions and class that you might want to surface. Maybe how you can talk to your colleagues about this, how you can bring this to a supervisor. All things that by looking at those specific videos and all of the information that Jennifer gave, things that you really want to work on. If you need some more time, go ahead and pause the recording. Otherwise, we are going to move on with class and Great Start to Quality and how this all fits together. So many of you may have already heard that we have a new model coming. It's a new quality improvement process that's going to be in place in February 2023. So if you've heard fall 2022, please know that that is a change. This is coming and launching in February 2023. It's a quality improvement that's a process. It's a journey that's continuous. So kind of like those models that Jennifer showed earlier, right? Think of all of those CQI models. It's a continuous journey. It's no longer checking the box to receive a higher rating. It's focusing on true quality improvement. And in the new model, there will be indicators for self-reflection, but those will not be scored. Those are going to be used to inform quality improvement. So technical assistance and coaching and consultation is still going to be provided by resource centers, but this new model really is going to be very supportive of all programs. So we're going to take a look at the new model, and you're probably wondering, where does class fit into this? So class observations will take place when the program or provider is ready and it's agreed upon by the Resource Center staff to move into demonstrating quality. You can see that light blue arrow that kind of points right to demonstrating quality. And that's where you will have your on-site observation. That's when the assessment team will come in, and in order to be demonstrating quality, you will have to meet some minimum scores to be able to reach that level. So you will hear a lot more about the Great Start to Quality model. We're just giving you a kind of a highlight. There's lots of trainings coming about for that as well. But class will take place if you are interested in demonstrating quality. And again, this will happen in February 2023. So class observations right now are not being done for the current process. And we'll talk a little bit about practice class, but right now this will be in February 2023. Righty, so I talked a little bit about those scores, those minimum scores needed to be at that demonstrating quality level. So here you will see just infants and toddlers, because that's what we're working on today. So you'll see those domains that Jennifer so eloquently shared with you. Responsive caregiving for the infant, you have to get a score of at least a 4.5 to move into that demonstrating quality level. And for the toddlers, your 2 domains, emotional and behavioral support, at least a score of a 5, and engaged support for learning, at least a 3.25. And class is scored on a scale of 1 to 7. So you can see that those scores are very equitable and achievable. Again, you're doing a lot of these things already. All right, so we have a little bit of a check for understanding. Pause and reflect. In the new model, all ages must meet the threshold score, which is that minimum score to be considered demonstrating quality. True or false? If you said true, that is correct. All ages must meet that threshold score to be considered demonstrating quality. All right, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Allison.
Thanks, Kristen. So I am going to be going over what you can expect during an observation, and I will provide you with some tips and hopes to better support you during a class observation. The first thing we are going to do is watch a video titled A Teacher's Take on Class Observations, and this video will give you some insight from educators about what to expect during a class observation.
My name is Dara. I work in a pre-K classroom. My children are from 3 to 5, and we have a mixed age group. I've been teaching preschool probably about 15 years now. The day they came in for class, I had prior knowledge they were coming. We had exchanged emails back and forth, and they made sure that it was going to be a day that should look like a typical day. You know, making sure all the key teachers are there, nothing crazy was going to be going on, so this way they could get a good snapshot of what our classroom really looks like. The observer came in a little bit before our class started. So she came in before we had children and parents, and it was crazy town. She just was kind of in a corner off to the side, watching with her little clipboard, and we just went about our day as normal. She did her 20 minutes, and then she went back into our workroom and just finished scoring, and then she'd come out and she'd do kind of another round. You've you've worked with children, you know how to be respectful of children. Be comfortable in yourself and just really trust in yourself and those skills. Trust your instincts and just keep going with it. Make sure you review your notes on class, what you're looking for, what you're probably already doing. Just make sure you review your notes, go over them, take a deep breath, and just really enjoy the children when you're with them. We're in the classroom every day, and we're not only dealing just with lesson planning, just with paperwork, just with looking from the outside. We're dealing with children, we're dealing with emotions, we're dealing with parents. If you have a full day program, you're dealing with naps, depending on which age group, you're dealing with diapers, you're dealing with formula, you're dealing with bottles. Then you say, oh, well, class is gonna come look at me too. It doesn't have to be one more thing, because all it helps us do as a profession is give us more legitimacy as to why we need open-ended play, why children need to be working through play, and how being supported social-emotionally are gonna make these children thrive and succeed. All class does is just point that out.
Okay, so we'll get the slides pulled back up. And the first thing we are going to go over more of is what to expect during an observation. So similar to program quality assessment, or better known as PQA, 1/3 of all classrooms will be observed, which must include each age group that your program is licensed for. There will be a phone call from your assigned assessor at the beginning of your window to verify your 4-week window and your blackout dates. And during this phone call, there will also be questions regarding your schedule, the staff, and the children to help us better understand your program and when the best time to observe is. The observations will be unannounced, but within your agreed upon scheduled 4-week window. The assessor will plan to arrive around the start of your scheduled activities. The observation time spent in the classroom is typically less, with class 2 to 4 hours, depending on the program schedule. And the assessor will sit quietly in the classroom where they can hear and take notes while observing, and will need a quiet space away from the educators and children to sit and score when this is possible. Cycles are 20 minutes of observation with 10 minutes of scoring in between each observation cycle. And since scoring is done on site, the observation to report time will typically be less. The assessor will take the scores after the observation is complete and write up a report with your program results. And once the reports for your program are complete, they will be delivered to your quality improvement consultant or coach, better known as QIC, who will then deliver the results to your program. Along with the reports with your results, additional detailed information about the observation will be shared with the QIC regarding the results in order to best support you in your improvement going forward. It is important to note really quick that all classrooms observed in a program must score the minimum score to achieve demonstrating quality, which was touched on by Kristen earlier. Okay, so like it was mentioned in the last slide, there will be a phone call from your assigned assessor at the beginning of your window. During this call, the assessor will ask the ages of the children in the classroom. This will make us aware of which tools we will need to use for your classroom and how many children there are in each age range. When the assessor arrives to your program, the assessor will ask the teacher to point out each child in the classroom and to inform us of their age so we can make note of that and what the child is wearing in order to remember which child is which when observing and taking notes. This is because one age group is assessed during any given cycle in a mixed age classroom. So for example, if you have infants and toddlers in your classroom, only the infant interactions will be looked at during the infant cycles, and only the toddler interactions will be looked at during the toddler cycles. While Great Start to Quality will have their business rules, it is important to note that each program will be looked at on a case-by-case basis. There are a lot of factors to consider when trying to determine how to be the most supportive in mixed age classrooms. One of the factors include the type of program you are, such as family childcare or center-based. Another factor to consider is the ages of the children in the classroom. For example, there may be infants, toddlers, and preschoolers observed in a family childcare setting, while in center-based, there may be infants and toddlers observed in the same classroom. Another factor to consider is the number of each of the ages being observed. And there may be one mixed age classroom that has 1 infant and 9 toddlers, while another mixed age classroom may have 5 infants and 5 toddlers. Another factor to consider is when to best observe each age. So knowing your schedule will be very important. For example, if you have a mixed age classroom, knowing your schedule ahead of time would be beneficial because we will not observe napping children. So if you have infants who nap in the morning, we would want to plan to observe the toddlers or preschoolers during that time. And it is also important for the assessor to know the schedule because preschoolers are not observed during outside time, while infants and toddlers can be observed during outside time. Therefore, knowing these components ahead of time helps us plan accordingly to make sure we're observing the different ages at the most supportive times. So now we will go over some tips. And the first thing I would like to say is just be yourself. We want a clear picture of what your day-to-day looks like and where you are at in order to best support you in your program's quality improvement. The class tool is based on interactions, so be sure to do just that. Interact with and focus on children and build those relationships. We know educators have tasks to do in their programs, but when completing these tasks, focus should still be on the children, and children should still be interacted with. For example, let's talk about cleaning the tables after a meal. When cleaning the tables, perhaps you let a toddler-aged child help you wipe the tables with a washcloth while interacting with the child about the process. Or when you are cleaning high chairs after infants are done eating, you clean while interacting with the infant crawling near you, by talking about what you are doing or what you are seeing the infant doing, or you are repeating or expanding on the infant's communications. Another example is when you are outside and place an infant in a swing or sit them on a blanket. While the infant is swinging or sitting on the blanket, instead of just passively observing, interact with the infant about what is going on around them, repeat their sounds, tell them what you are doing or what you see them doing. Another helpful tip is to remember that the score is based on all the educators in the classroom. Each educator should be focused on the children and interacting with them. Again, really putting emphasis on the call. The assessor will call before the observation at the beginning of the window. The more the assessors know, the more opportunity there is for support. We will need to know your detailed schedule in order to best plan for your observation, the names of the educators that would be observed, and any accommodations for and ages of the children. So now we will check for understanding. The question is, when the assessor calls you before the observation, you should be prepared to provide the assessor with A, a detailed schedule, B, names of all the educators, C, any accommodations for and ages of each child, or D, all of the above. We'll give you a moment to think about the answer. Okay, so those who answered D, all of the above, you got the answer correct. We do need a detailed schedule. We will need names of all the educators, and we will also need any accommodations for and ages of each child.
Thanks, Allison. So now let's take a look at some resources and supports to help you as you continue to learn about the class tool and keep track of all the updates coming with Great Start to Quality in February 2023. So we do have the Class Will Replace PQA page on our Great Start to Quality website at greatstarttoquality.org. There you can find out more information about the change. There's a link to Teachstone's website. Remember, Teachstone is the owner of the Classroom Assessment Scoring System tool. When you go to their website, you can download a couple of free ebooks to get more information. You can sign up for their listserv. They have recorded webinars you can listen to. You can listen to podcasts. have a ton of information to support you. We try to highlight pieces of information that will be most supportive to you in learning about the class tool. One thing that we would encourage you, if you're wanting to purchase any Teachstone materials, they have a dimension guide on their website, and we will have that linked on our class website page, on the Great Start to Quality page. The dimension guide, there's one for each age group. So there's an infant, toddler, and pre-K one. They're $19.95 at this time of recording. That's the cost of them. But they are helpful books to help you learn those domains and dimensions that I shared information on earlier. They walk you through that, explain why this domain is important, what each dimension looks like, and give some specific examples of how those interactions for each dimension take place within your setting. One thing Kristen shared from the get-go, this is not happening until February of 2023. So just know that these changes we're talking about are not happening yet. We are looking for opportunity to conduct more on-site practice class observations. So these are simply practice class observations. You'll see our email come up soon that you can email us if you're interested. We're looking for all types of program setting types and age groups, mixed age groups, to get our assessment team out there doing these practice class observations. From each practice class observation, you will get a practice learning report. And then just know, as I mentioned earlier, more training is coming on the pre-K tool later this summer. So these are our resources on the website. So Great Start to Quality website, the Teachstone website, which is teachstone.com, and those dimension guides that I mentioned earlier. There's one for the infant, toddler, and pre-K. Those are great resources to pick up to go into more specifics about the domains and dimensions for each of the ages.
Great. And like Jennifer mentioned, the Great Start to Quality assessment team is out right now doing practice class observations, and we'll be continuing to do so into the summer and fall to prepare for our official transition in 2023. And like she mentioned, here is the email that you can send us an email if you are interested in having a class observation conducted. Again, this does not count towards the current Great Start to Quality star rating. So those assessments are still using PQA, and we've had some questions surrounding that. So remember, this would be a practice class observation. Class officially will be used in February 2023. So assessment at ecic4kids.org if you're interested in learning more or would like a practice class observation. And here is all of our contact information. I just would like to say that we all are open to anyone reaching out to any one of us if you have questions regarding anything that you saw in the recording today. You can reach out to myself, Kristen Howard, Jennifer Roundtree, or Allison Page.
So thank you for watching this recording today. We hope you learned some insightful information on class and have a better understanding of how this will look in your program. And I hope to see you for either a class practice session or a future class observation. Have a great rest of the day.